Hey guys, this guide is for utilizing Playnite with Steam input. What this guide is not for is direct Steam input, although some of this will apply. Um, Also, if you have another controller driver that's working for you well, like SWICD, great. The reason to go over to Steam input is, well, for customization purposes, for being able to utilize Steam input's controller layout functions, but also to have rumble ability, because SWICD right now is currently lacking that. You won't be able to take advantage of your button that has the three dots on it. You will utilize your Steam button as the chord configuration, and we'll talk about that as I go through. But the first thing is, just to let you know, I'm not responsible if anything breaks on your system, your Steam Deck doesn't boot, whatever. I'm not responsible for any problems that might abound by following this guide. Also, I know that I'll be going and disallowing certain security measures in Windows that will make it much more exploitable. So if you are very security conscious, then probably don't follow this guide. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to disable UAC and control panel. So if you go to control panel and type in UAC at the top, you'll get user account control. You're going to change the slider to never notify and say OK. Then in Steam, on a shortcut, you're going to go to Properties and Compatibility tab, and you're going to set it to run as administrator. And the first time you launch Steam as administrator, it's going to warn you, oh no, things won't work. Okay, well, it's fine. Click the checkbox to say don't bother me again when it comes up, and you'll be okay. So once you're inside of Steam, you're going to need a game to set up a controller layout. First, we need to establish a game layout. Then we can establish a desktop layout as a kind of a coverall. And then we can look at the chord configuration. So first, you just add a non-Steam game to mess with. So in this instance, I added Playnite. And you'll go to Manage, and you'll go to Controller Layout. And here I've kind of already done some configuration, but let's just start fresh. So if I go to Browse Configs, and I highly recommend, by the way, that you have a mouse and keyboard to work with, because it's just big picture mode is very clunky to navigate. So we're going to go ahead, I'm going to say template. Typically, this is what you're going to get anyways when you first start it, is this gamepad with joystick trackpad. Okay. Now this will work just fine if you launch this with Playnite. No problems on most games. On some games, it will detect desktop. Steam will think that it's in desktop mode, and it will switch to desktop mode. So we need to mirror the settings that we have on a game for desktop mode. But we also want mouse control, right? We want the ability to move around the mouse and do system things without having to maybe press the Steam button all the time. Because if you hold the Steam button, you can move the mouse around all you want. But it's just a hassle to deal with. So what I like to do is I like to add an action layer. So this is going to be a brief tutorial about Steam input, but we'll just call this mouse control. All right, and now we need some way to toggle that action layer, which will give us a whole new series of controls. So what I like to do is set select as that. What we're going to do is add another activator. We already have, the normal, if you press select, it does the select button on a gamepad. Great. Go to show activators, say add an activator, and switch it to double press is what I like to do. Personally, I also like to add another one for closing apps, but I'll show you that in a second. So double press, we'll set the binding. Oh, before we set the binding, we're going to increase the double tap time because this window is pretty small. You have to tap it pretty quickly together. So I just like to go a little over double of the normal default double tap time. So if you click binding, then it comes up with, okay, what do you want to bind it to? Well, this button here lets us change to select an action set or an action layer. So it's an action layer. We're going to apply it. Say OK. It's going to say, okay, which one? Okay, well, just the one we just created. And we'll leave beep on change. That way it lets us know. SteamDeck will make a little beep noise when you flip over to it. Say OK. Then I like to also do another activator. I'll show you this real quick. To a long press and set it really long. And we're going to set this, we're going to say toggle multi-button and set it to Alt and F4. So that way, if you're in a game in Playnite and you want to close it, you just hold down the select button for a while, and then it will completely close the app and go back to your Playnite, typically in full screen mode if you have that configured. All right, so that's all good there. And so now we can see that it has the ability to press normal select, apply an action layer, and also to close an app. So now we're going to set up our mouse stuff. So if we go here to mouse control, now you can see everything's grayed out. That's because those are all the settings on the other layer, on the default layer. So we're going to add some mouse control. We're going to change the trackpads first. Set this to mouse. Set the click action to left click. Probably the same thing here. Actually, we'll set this to be a scroll wheel. Typically, I'll set the triggers to do the right and left click. It's going to be under soft pull action. And soft pull action here. Okay. Left click, right click, great. Then I'll set the shoulder buttons to be middle. And then I'd like to give the right joystick. Yeah, this is the joystick. The big picture mode's so messed up. But if you go here, set this to joystick mouse. I'm not going to put click action. I would never really click in the stick for a left click on a joystick. All right. Then I also like to set the start button. And we'll talk about this in a bit, but I'm going to set this to actually do multi-button and shift and tab, and that will bring up the controller layout, or the the Steam overlay. And then we need some way for it to go back, so let's add the select. Here, what we're going to do is say add activator. It'll say, okay, what do you want to do? We'll say copy. So this is the way I found it to work. There's probably a better way, but say copy activators, and I'm just gonna basically remove this one. I'm gonna keep the double press. No, actually, I'm gonna remove that as well. I'm gonna remove everything. Okay, I'll leave Alt F4. That's fine. So regular press for this, since it's a mouse control, I'm going to say, escape as the regular press, and then again set double press. And this time for double press, we're going to go back here to the action option, and we're going to remove the mouse control action layer. So that way, you double tap, you get mouse control. You double tap, you get regular control. Makes sense? Typically, I'll set this to WASD, just in case maybe it's a Maybe it's a first-person game or something, or third-person game with normal WASD control. And I just want to get in there real quick, test it out without doing a crazy controller layout. Alright, so I think that looks pretty good. Usually I'll set these buttons to be something like F1 for Y and backspace for X, and let's see, and B would probably be, honestly I forgot what I set B to. I'll just back up there. I will set this to enter. Oh, you know what? Let's do spacebar. All right, so F1 backspace space return. Cool. So that's about it with this. It's good to go, but we have to export it. So now we're gonna say we're gonna save a new personal binding file. We're gonna give it a name. I'm just gonna say controller dash desktop config. All right. Great. It's been uploaded. Awesome. Okay. So now we can escape or B or whatever out of there. And we're going to need to go into Steam settings. And inside, let me move this around. Where did it go? Oh. It's under Steam settings. And you can do this in big picture mode too if you really want to. But we're going to set up the desktop configuration here. And the reason why you can't just set up the desktop exactly how the game was just here is that it won't let you add any Steam inputs. I'm sorry, X input. It won't let you add any controller stuff. The only way to add controller stuff into a desktop configuration is to import it when it's done. So you can see here I've got my Playnite final one here. It's pretty similar, but if I go to Browse Configs and go to my other games, I'll see under Playnite, there's the new one, controller desktop config. So when I put that in, then I'm going to say, okay, apply configuration, and it's going to let it go. So now that is my desktop configuration. So now let me just test this out real quick because I'm using a mouse and keyboard. Let me go to my SteamDeck controller here. So right now I can't browse, but if I double tap select, I don't know if you can hear that beep, but now I have mouse control on the trackpad or the joystick. Well, it's really sensitive, but you get the idea. And then select back will, oh, yeah, there we go. Select, double tapping select back. Now I can't control the mouse at all because it is a gamepad. All right, and that'll work for Playnite. So if I just go ahead and launch this real quick. I hope it launches on the right window. It didn't. All right. Let's see if it will go to the right screen. I think it only wants to go to the primary. Ah, bad example. So I'll just let you know it's working. All right, so I'm going to exit Playnite. So that's done. Now the other thing is the chord configuration. Valve has brought it upon itself to always phone home when the chord configuration is messed with. It will check every time it launches if that file has been messed with, and if so, it will overwrite it back to being the original configuration. So if you go into settings here, and the reason why chord config is so important is that it allows this guide button chord configuration is what I'm speaking about. It allows Steam to be able to do a command, whether it's in a game, on the desktop, or whatever. So often, sometimes I'll find that even my desktop configuration won't let my mouse work, and I'll have to hold down the Steam button, then it will work. Well, the same goes with Windows commands. Often I've found that my desktop configuration, if I try to do something like a Windows button plus D to minimize everything, it doesn't work. So the best way that I found is to overwrite that configuration when you launch Steam. So if I go into here real quick, you'll see I have a custom configuration. Now, every time I close Steam, like I said, and reopen it, if I'm just opening Steam, it will overwrite this file. There's a couple ways to do it. One is a batch script that I will include in the comments and a Dropbox zip file. And I'll show you this real quick. So it's going to be like this. SteamDeck important stuff. All right. So if you actually extract this SteamDeck important stuff to your C drive, everything should work with the exception that you're going to need to make a couple changes. And those couple changes are under Steam controller mapping. This is for the chord configuration. We've got modified and original and the batch script. Okay. You're going to need to set this batch script to run as administrator. You'll have to make a shortcut for it. Just say create shortcut here. Go to properties. And you can set it here under advanced, run as administrator. Okay. And then you're going to also, actually that's it for this. All right. One thing you're going to need to change in here, if you're going to be using Playnite, and I would edit this anyways. This is the batch script. Okay, it's going to kill Steam and Playnite, but before it does that, it's also going to copy the original chord controller configuration to Steam, so that Steam doesn't try to go and get the chord configuration from its servers, because this makes the Steam application take like 2 or 3 minutes to boot because of that. So it's going to initially copy that. This is also going to set this, and we'll talk about this in a second, about offline mode. It's going to copy this login.vdf file back over to say, yeah, we're good. We want to be on online mode. Then it's going to run here. So this is what you need to change, is this Steam shortcut. So to do that, you're going to go into Playnite. You're going to say add desktop shortcut. It's going to make that shortcut on your desktop. You go to properties. You copy this. Okay, that's the Steam URL that it's going to call when it wants to launch Steam. All right. That's all you need to change really in here. As long as you put this whole folder, the SteamDeck important stuff, put that on your C drive, and it should work. Once I remove this. All right. Yeah, it's good. Okay. So how do you change a chord configuration? Like, this is the way for my configuration, but what if you wanted to make your own? Well, you just need to go and make another controller layout somewhere, whether it's Playnite or anything else. And personally, I've set mine to be a mouse control. So you'll see here. And I've got some hotkeys that are calling um, frequency changes to 30 hertz, 40 hertz, 50 hertz, etc. And these shoulder buttons are hotkeys to use Twinkle Tray to change the brightness, which we could talk about another day. But basically I set this up just with mouse control, and then the most important here is all my Windows commands like Windows key and tab that shows all your open applications, Windows key and D that minimizes everything or brings it all back up, or have an Alt and Tab. So all those are extremely helpful and will be activated as long as you hold down the Steam button when you're doing this stuff. So in order to make that, you make a new config. Once that config is done, what you need to do is go into the Chord Configuration folder. One second. Wrong window. So let's just say, for example, Playnite. Well, if that's the config I want for my chord configuration, which I don't, but if I did, you can go in here to Common, Steam Controller Configs, your account thing, config, Playnite, and here's the file that contains the configuration. Okay, if you are in a different game or something, just sort this by date modified, and then you can see the latest changed folder, and these are all the app IDs for the different games. So once you have the one that you want, you can copy it, and I'd recommend that you just put it in the batch script, but if for some reason you wanted to overwrite it manually and play and test this out, that's fine. I would say, okay, just to let you know, put it in the modified section and name it Chord Neptune for the batch script. But if you wanted to mess with it yourself and just manually copy it, it would be actually under Steam and then controller base. It's this one here called Chord Neptune. So the batch script will wait for Playnite to open, and then it will copy this full file over the modified version. The other way you can get around this is if you add the -no verify files command to Steam when you launch it. That should keep it from checking if that file has been modified. So with all that being said, that's in a nutshell how Steam input will work with pretty much any game. For Glossi, you would need to download it, install it, because there's two applications, and I'll show you this real quick. So Glossi, there's two applications. Once you extract it, you have to run the hid hide setup and the VIG bus setup, blah blah blah. Once you're done with that, reboot the computer, reboot the SteamDeck. Then come back here. Then you're going to go to Glossi config. You see I've already got some in here. Now here's the thing with Glossi is if you try to set this up and you don't do the desktop as a gamepad, the controls still won't work. So you have to set the desktop mode configuration in Steam input. But that's not enough. It still needs Glossi to work. I've tested back and forth. So what you'll do is you open Glossi config. You find the Gamepass game that you want. I've pretty much got all of mine here, but I'll just show you real quick. So if I click the plus button, it gives the option to add manually, Win32 program, or UWP app. So for Gamepass, it's going to be UWP apps. And it's going to pull up a list of your different ones. Some of these are named a little oddly, but that's just the way it goes. In here, pretty much everything default will work. But this I typically disable because I don't see myself editing the controller layout for Glossi, and I don't like that Glossi brings up the overlay every time. So you check this, you say done, and Steam has to be running, by the way, when you do this. You go ahead and say, click the plus button to add Tetris effect. Please restart Steam to reload your changes. Well, here's the thing. Typically, when I go and I restart, we'll see how it goes, but when this goes, it's editing a shortcuts.vdf file, and it manages to screw it up almost every time. So then when I come in here, all my other shortcuts that I may have added in the past are just gone. So we'll see if it actually shows up. Of course, I didn't set no verify file, so it's going through and it's overwriting my chord config right now. So, oh wow, it didn't kill it this time. Awesome. Sometimes I see that my shortcuts will just be missing, and I'll just have to recreate them, unfortunately. And that means then that you need to update the batch file as well with the new Steam URL, so you have to make a new shortcut. But there's Tetris effect. Anyways, you'll see that this has Glossi as the target and all that stuff. So it'll work. And then the way you add it to Playnite typically is that you just run it through the Xbox integration. Then the only other thing was the login files for offline mode. So offline mode typically takes 2 to 3 minutes to come up. This was something I just found this morning. But if you go, let's just go here to SteamDeck important stuff. And just to let you know, if you're curious, if you just like the Playnite configurations that I have already in place, you can copy this folder to your program files x86, and it's going to overwrite the chord config as well as the Playnite config. But of course, you have to have Playnite already added as a Steam shortcut, and the name has to match this. It's not case sensitive, but it has to match this. Can't say Playnite full screen or something. So going back in here under offline mode, I have a script that I made that will pretty much do the same thing. As the normal start Steam. But there's one thing that it does copy over that's different, which is this modified portion of offline mode. And what this is a login users.vdf file that's under your main Steam /config folder. All you need to do in here is either copy your existing one or use this as an example, but both wants offline mode and skip offline mode warning need to be set to 1. And again, Steam will, if you go online, it will overwrite this file, this login users.vdf. So you need it to run. If you want to go online, I recommend you run the batch script. If you want to go offline, I recommend you run the batch script. So, you could just simply fill out your login name, which is your like Steam account name, and then your Steam name, which would be like your display name inside of Steam. If you just update those on both the modified and the original folders, then it'll just work with the batch script as long as you update the Playnite Steam URL under here, under Start Steam. Yeah, everything else looks good. So I hope this helps. I hope this gets you started on the glorious Steam input. And if there's any questions, I'll have the link to the public Discord on chat as well, or the comment section, as well as the link to these files and the links to Playnite and Glossi. And I think that covers it. Yep. All right. Hopefully won't see you in the next video because I don't like making these.